I started this channel back in 2018 with the main goal of just trying to help develop my writing skills, get better at editing and game capture, but also just to talk about games I really love. Originally this channel was a review channel, which I don't regret, but let's be honest, analysing game design is clearly not my strong suit. And also one of the biggest things that I used to watch on YouTube were lore channels such as Hidden Xperia, My Name is Bife, Noble87 and Belua. So going into lore videos was something that really interested me much more. I'll be real, I did not expect my videos to ever get the traction they got, and I never expected to get 100,000 subscribers, but I am so thankful to all of you watching this video now for helping this channel get to this milestone and to get this absolutely beautiful silver play button. I'm honestly over the moon right now and felt a special 100,000 video needed to be made. So in today's video, instead of doing a small thank you video, I thought it would be fun to explore my top 10 favourite lore stories that I have covered in recent years and talk a little bit about how I made them and why those stories are my favourite. And don't worry, I haven't picked them based on view count. These are genuinely my favourite stories I have covered, and if you did want to check the videos out that I talk about, they'll all be listed in the description below. But before I begin that, I also want to shout out my Twitch channel WiseFish YT, where I will be doing more live streams on Fridays, Saturdays and any other days schedule dependent. So it'll be great to see you there, and yes, I will be sticking to that more often with re-uploads going to my second YouTube channel. So please check out that if you want to watch some playthroughs and easy to watch live streams. But with that said, welcome to the WiseFish 100,000 subscriber special. These are my top 10 favourite lore stories that I have covered. Starting off our list, we have the Arasaka Mega Boy of Adam Smasher. I'll be honest, Adam Smasher in the game wasn't the greatest of villains, and most people will think he's a pretty hollow character. But with all that said, I really do think Adam Smasher is one of the coolest designed characters in the cyberpunk world. He's so ridiculously terrifying to look at when up close, and houses some of the best armor out there that realistically he should be an unstoppable force. Even in the original tabletop RPG, his design is pretty cool. He doesn't look human in the slightest. He dual wields and charges into battle, and he's just so blood hungry that it makes for an exciting villain in the world. The fact that CD Projekt Red took the original material for him and went completely overboard, making him completely mech at this point, makes him really cool in my eyes. With his blood red pupil lights and completely pale white face, having these close-up shots just make him look terrifying, even if V can take him out with relative ease. But my love for Adam Smasher comes a lot from his horrific one-liners from the game, but more specifically from edgerunners who just made Adam Smasher stand out so much better. For me, Adam Smasher would be easily forgettable without the anime, because in edgerunners his sheer brutality comes out. It's absolutely hilarious how blunt and aggressive he is, and his arsenal is really on show here, taking no prisoners wherever he goes, and the fact that he absolutely massacres the main characters, beloved characters at this point as well, like Rebecca, who he absolutely flattens, and then David being absolutely totaled by him despite having equal equipment, just makes him that original character from the RPG and a terrifying presence. I mean, this shot in particular does a fantastic job of making him look like an absolute monster compared to anything remotely human. Edgerunners just made Adam Smasher such a fantastic villain, and if Cyberpunk 2077 is having some new endings to the story, then maybe Adam Smasher is still out there and will make a big return. And if he does, I really hope his boss battle and encounters are far more terrifying. This video of his was great fun to make as well, and I think it was the first where I utilized Cyberpunk's photo mode to get some detailed close-ups of Adam Smasher and his equipment. With that said, it was a bit of a pain as I was playing the game on hard mode and had to keep trying to get Smasher into cool positions for the video, and the amount of times I died was pretty embarrassing. I really wish there was a way to get the original Adam Smasher from the 2023 Arasaka Tower mission, but unfortunately you can't use photo mode to grab him there. With that said, I really loved making this video, and I do stand by the fact that to me, Adam Smasher is a really cool and brutal antagonist, and that was huge thanks to edgerunners. But going forward, I hope to see more Adam Smasher, and considering the fact he has been brought back to life twice now, it's no doubt he'll be back for a third time, looking even more terrifying. Quite a broad one as it explores the whole history of the Skyrim region, but I really find the whole story behind the Nords very cool, from the origins of the first men stepping foot on the land, to the Dragon War and worship years, the Night of Tears event, and then to the Civil War. There's absolutely tons of history within this land, and that is all done through visual storytelling within cities, very interesting quest lines, character interactions, and even just simple items located on the land. But more importantly, venturing over this land really is something special. Making this whole video just brought back tons of nostalgia for when I first played this game back when it came out in 2011. Yeah, 12 years ago. The different cities dotted over the land offer their own unique stories. The Forsworn clan story is really interesting if you haven't read about it, and then there's even the books on what happened within this land, like that of the Wolf Queen, who became so envious and bitter that she plotted to take the throne for herself. There's so much to unpack within Skyrim, and I really do think the narrative team behind the world did a fantastic job of making exploration rewarding and helping those lore-obsessed individuals like myself wanting to dive into those dusty books within the hundreds of bookshelves within the world. This video on the history of Skyrim was just so much fun to make as well, and I'd argue one of my favorites because, as I mentioned, I just loved exploring all of the areas of this game. It really is beautiful. To make it stand out though, I of course modded it to absolute death, doing graphical overhauls, immersive armors that were lore friendly, weather systems, EMBs, the full works to try and make it as cinematic as possible. And for those that want to see some of the mods I've used, I'll try and put up my list here for you because it really makes the game stand out. But on top of that as well, Bethesda, despite the engine being absolutely awful, really do make it possible for creators to go mad with creativity, allowing you to do console commands to grab items, fly around the world, spawn NPCs, and so many other things that this whole world became my playground for a good few weeks as I made the video. And it just makes me want to have a new Elder Scrolls game so I can explore a new land and its history. Basically, I adore Skyrim. I think it's such a unique world and its history is really in depth. But the thing about it is, I just loved making this video, and I think I speak for many people when I say this, but Skyrim is such a phenomenal game that still is great to boot up even over a decade on. A video series that I absolutely loved making last year was the Vaults of Fallout, and I could put all of them down here just as one topic, but each vault is so specific in its stories that I had to just pick one out which I personally felt was the most interesting to me and arguably the most harrowing of stories. For me, that was Vault 11, which, if you haven't played Fallout New Vegas, Vault 11 was a social experiment made by Vault-Tec which put the idea in the Vault dwellers' heads that they needed to vote for a sacrifice who would die to allow the others to live. It would lead to voting years where candidates would be put up for election, and the person who would win would be the new overseer and the sacrificial candidate. It meant that gangs formed trying to force people they didn't like to be the new overseer, couples going against each other, paranoia spreading throughout the whole vault, and ultimately it was run by fear. But the catch was that if they all stuck together and went against the computer and didn't sacrifice anyone, the computer would simply praise them for combining together as one and reward them with freedom. This whole vault might be a bit boring to walk around at first, but the environmental storytelling is absolutely fantastic, and I personally think the whole concept of a vault as a form of social experimentation is brilliant. It's some of Obsidian's strong suit when it comes to vault design, and the story of the last survivors of this vault is pretty tragic and very interesting as well. As I just mentioned, in terms of enemy and gameplay design, the vault isn't the most interesting when you venture into it. But I personally think the story of what happened to the inhabitants here was one of the best, and the sheer thought of being in that position where you are always voting for someone to be sacrificed just so you can survive is some really horrible post-apocalyptic stuff. These vault videos were so much fun to make as well because, as mentioned within the Skyrim video, Fallout just allows you to go around and play with the engine to capture as much as you want and manipulate the world around you. Just toggling to free cam mode allowed me to to explore all of the vaults from top to bottom to see all they had on offer, whilst also keeping any NPCs or enemies in their place to show the vault how you would first encounter it without causing any disruption. Honestly, if you ever want to, just go into free cam and explore the worlds of Fallout, especially New Vegas. There are so many gems of storytelling you might come to see that you might have missed the first time you play it, and also on top of that, when you mod it, you can make it so cinematic. And that's personally why I loved making the Vault videos, and why I put Vault 11 as one of my favourite lore stories from them all. I've always been fascinated by Celtic, Germanic and Norse mythology and folklore, and for me the Witcher books and games do a fantastic job of displaying them through world design and enemies. The Wild Hunt, for example, is a fascinating concept that's been in our world's history for years on end. These terrifying riders taken to the skies with their hordes of warriors to kill and take from many people. The Witcher does a great job at displaying their horrifying nature, making them look like the dead have risen and have taken to the skies to raid homes and villages, and the use of the Great Frost to disguise their charge is also another creepy ethereal look to them. On top of that, their design within the first game, where they are just spectres who roam the land, is also really cool, and just another part of their storyline. But apart from them being just based on the real life Wild Hunt, I just find the stories behind the elves of the An-El and the En-Shea to be really interesting. Their whole origin story of how they formed within Tir na Lei is pretty tragic to some extent, knowing that their society is really struggling and they are just looking for a way to survive in the future. But the separation between the two types is really unique, with arguably the An-El being brutal, emotionless conquerors, not really caring about any other species other than themselves, and the En-Shea being the ones who were conquered themselves. Their endless journey to finding a source of ultimate power to save their society has led them to try and find Ciri and use her elder blood, and that just makes their presence on the land become more terrifying, as they will burn down villages and anyone who gets in their way. The relationship between them and Geralt is also really cool, with him being a part of them on their travels. They're just a really awesome antagonist, and were a fantastic one to fight against in the third game, and learn more about how their whole society is structured and ruled by the ultimate betrayal of their king. It really frustrates and annoys me that the whole elven lore has been destroyed by Netflix's version of The Witcher, because they had so much story that was interesting and could have been delved into, especially the difference between the two elven cultures. Blood Origins just makes them into humans 2.0 with no unique features, and completely butchers Eredin, who in the series suddenly just becomes the leader of the Wild Hunt with no real explanation, and now season 3 of The Witcher, they're just there. It makes no sense, and it's sad that their really interesting lore and society has been stripped away and essentially turned into two-dimensional villains that Geralt, Ciri and Yen have to fight. Honestly, the Wild Hunt are better than that, and if you really want to explore this fascinating faction, go check out the books and the games, because to me they are really worth looking into, and not just some generic bad guy that Geralt has to fight. Similar in style to the Wild Hunt, the Dark Ones from the Metro series are a really interesting and honestly quite terrifying faction, especially on first exploring the game. When I first opened Metro 2033 back in the 2010 era, the threat of the mutants was pretty scary, but when the idea of the Dark Ones got involved and how they drove people to utter madness, that made the game just stand out so much as really unique compared to other post-apocalyptic worlds. The whole idea that there are creatures out on the surface and now within the dark Metro tunnels, turning people mad and making people disappear without a trace, makes for some brilliant horror, but the further idea that they are man-made without any real explanation as to why or how makes them all the more fascinating for me. Whilst you never really get to fight them within the game, I personally think that makes them more unique as being creatures that you know are there, but no idea when they will show up, or if they did, what they would do. The book explores the effects on what they do so well as well, especially when it comes to Hunter within 2034, where he is shown a vision as to what he is really like as a person, leading him to this whole existential crisis. With Artyom as well, there's always this idea that the Dark Ones are not what they seem, and of course there's Khan as well, believing they are not there to harm. They are just misunderstood. The Dark Ones just made Metro stand out so much, as I mentioned, and as much as I absolutely adore Metro Exodus as it gave us an idea of what the rest of the world is like during this time, I did feel like the presence of the Dark Ones made it lose a bit of that mystery and darkness. Same as Last Light as well to some extent. But with that said, when Artyom gets into the Dead City to seek the cure for Anna and sees the hallucinations, the Dark Ones look like they are on show, and that just really excites me for the future of this series. It really feels like they are core to the overall arc of the Metro story now. Personally, the Dark Ones are fascinating creatures, but they do more than just be an antagonist to the Metro storyline. They bring in a human aspect as well. They make you question whether or not you are following the right path. What makes us us? How we deal with creatures similar to humans, or how we act when we are threatened by something we do not fully understand. If the Metro series was simply humans versus humans and monsters, it would be a good game, but that depth comes from the Dark Ones, and without their story and how they influence the timeline, I don't think the Metro series would be as successful as it is today. Metro 2033 was extremely special, and that is why the Dark Ones are on this list. I don't think it's any new information that I really like the world of Cyberpunk. I think its whole concept and timeline is absolutely fascinating. The characters, the factions, the world events, it's all really interesting. A unique concept of its own that has really become a real cultural phenomenon, with many different games, pieces of literature and films taking this role. Part of what makes Cyberpunk stand out for me is Night City itself. I absolutely love the design of this place as a whole, and yes, you could argue that it's just a regular city with tons of neon lights all over the place, but it's far more than that for me. It's a real display of what life would be like if every culture came together to make one city. It combines every culture out there into one place, from the Japanese streets of Jig Jig Street to the Hispanic area of Haywood to the Haitian area of Pacifica. It does a fantastic job of combining all of them into a somewhat functioning city, and also goes on to display what the world would be like if it was a pure capitalist utopia where corporations had the final say in what goes on around them. The design of this city is just pure brilliance, and very, very interesting as well. From the original plans for it to the development cycle and all of the small bits of lore from the original tabletop RPG, but then when in development you have all the small power struggles between the corporations, the mob, Yakuza, and all of the new gangs make it just this terrifying yet beautiful place to live. And now in 2077, there is still so much to explore around the place. Each building has its own unique style of life. You get to see the corruption around the place. Homelessness is massive here, and ultimately there are a lot of interesting stories within the city, be that with characters or corporations, or even the gangs and nomad groups. Edgerunners once again gave just a little more depth into how things are done here, how cyberpsychosis is rampant with some individuals, how Militech and Arasaka seem to run the streets, and also what Edgerunners get up to on their missions utilizing their cyber technology. Yes, Cyberpunk was busted when it came out for many people, and you can easily say that the world didn't feel as alive as what they said it would, but I cannot dislike Night City. I think it's a fascinating place that has a great story coming from the mind of Richard Knight. The events that have taken place over the years means there is always something to look into, and that is evident from the buildings, the different districts, and its people. Also, just exploring the city is great to me, and pretty relaxing as well. When I record these Cyberpunk videos, I find that most of the time I am just getting generic B-roll of the city skyline, because the neon lights with the new path tracing lighting just makes it stand out so much. And for me personally, I think it's one of the most beautiful cities to explore within gaming. I just hope going into the future of this IP, we get more dynamic elements going on, such as world events, better max tac involvement, and just some advanced AI as well. But overall, the story of Night City over the years really grips me, and I just love exploring this beautiful but terrifying neon place. It is a city unlike any other. I really love Mass Effect lore, and whilst I have done a few videos over the years, I really hope to make more in the near future. I'm just praying the new game gets announced sooner rather than later. With that said, out of the countless stories that the game explores, the one that really stood out to me and the first one I went on to make a video for was the First Contact War. Essentially, this was where humanity first ventured forward into the stars to see what was going on out there within the wider Milky Way galaxy, utilizing the mass relays they discovered on the edge of their solar system. But when venturing into another mass relay, they would discover a new species of the Turians, who would immediately attack them for being in out of bounds territory. The thing I love about this First Contact War is the whole idea that this could be the first thing that would happen to us if we ventured out of our comfort zone of the solar system. The fact that our instinct to just explore and discover could threaten other species is pretty believable, but also the reason for why the Turians attack out of the sheer worry for releasing a hostile force they were once at war with in the years before makes it so much more interesting. You want to know more about this new alien race and why they have suddenly become so hostile, and actually it makes them really relatable later on when you look into their history. You also go to realize that the Turians aren't that different to us. They have the same honor that many humans have. They are also just as scared as us in these situations and will do anything to protect their species, and also their fighting skills were just as good. It's pretty cool to me that the first species humanity would encounter on their journey would be one that was so similar, and despite the war would be a close ally in the future. But without this war, we wouldn't have the universe that we have in the games. Humanity wouldn't be a part of the Citadel at all. We wouldn't have the relationships with the other species there, but we also wouldn't fully have the events of the first game, as tensions are still high with the Turians after the war had ended, with many humans still taking a massive dislike to them and the other species. To me, it's just a fascinating way of bringing humanity into this new space exploration age. It's a fantastic way to display that outside of the Sol system, things are really not as harmonious as we'd expect, and other alien species also experience the same problems, if not worse problems, than us. And with the First Contact War, it makes us want to explore other events, most specifically the one that led to it in the first place, that being the Rachni War, in which the Turians were first brought into the Citadel ranks. There's just tons of depth to the whole Mass Effect universe, and that makes it just one of the greatest video games of all time. And where better to start that lore dive than the First Contact War, the one that helped us realize we are not alone out there, and ultimately these species are not so different from us. There's been absolutely tons of interesting characters within the Fallout universe, and I am sure I could list my favorites in a massive video, because characters like the Survivalist, Harold, the Master, and Caesar are all brilliantly written characters that bring so much to the world's narrative. However, for me, Joshua Graham trumps them all, being one of the most interesting characters not in just Fallout, but within the whole of gaming. Why Joshua Graham? Well, his whole story is just so layered. It goes through so many different stages, from ambition to ignorance to rage and redemption. Starting off as one of the founders of Caesar's Legion, he just gives us so much context into how this whole faction started, what its ambitions were, and what role he served in it. Ultimately, he was the right-hand man for Caesar and was honored in his own way. However, that said, after a battle at Hoover Dam that went horrifically wrong for him and his troops, he was punished greatly, being set on fire and thrown off the dam itself, with many believing he was dead and never coming back. But despite that, miraculously, Joshua lived, albeit extremely scarred, and ventured over the whole world seeking a new life. This would spread rumors about his existence, and suddenly, this now bandaged man became one of legend, with many of the Legion and the NCR telling these stories and actually being scared of who or what he was. This all leads to the events of the Dead Money expansion, where we can finally meet him to hear his tales. I just absolutely love the whole depiction depiction of Joshua Graham. I think his whole presence on screen is brilliant and really comes across as a fantastic leader. And the voice actor of, I'm not gonna get his name right at all, Keith, this guy on screen right now, nails his whole persona with the great gravelly voice that is also the voice of that guy from Skyrim who steals the golden claw in Bleak Falls Barrow. You know, that really annoying guy that you cut out of the web and then he runs off and then just kills himself. But anyway, Graham's story is pretty tragic, but the whole arc of it just turns into a real story of redemption and revenge. And as mentioned earlier, helps give us more context into who the Legion are and what they do to people who go against their ways. One of my favorite things about Joshua Graham is honestly his monologues, which is why I loved making a little monologue music tribute at the end of the video. His voice is so soothing and I take it over any inspirational video on YouTube or God forbid TikTok. The warming fire of his new location, the gravelly voice of him, and the starry night makes for some ultra relaxing Fallout moments. The DLC isn't the best ever honestly, but I truly believe that the stories of Joshua Graham, his whole personality and his new self within the area of Zion Canyon is for me one of the greatest Fallout characters out there. And if you haven't explored his story or heard his monologues yet, I highly encourage you to check them out, because Fallout New Vegas is a great game and Joshua Graham only helps solidify it as an outright classic. Similar to Mass Effect, BioShock is another series where I haven't made many videos, but I absolutely adore this game franchise and want to make more in the near future. Like with Night City and Skyrim, the world of Rapture is to me one of the most interesting concepts and worlds in all of gaming and media. It was one of the first mature gaming worlds I was plunged into, and still to this day I remember the plunge down into the ocean and the journey through the depths, seeing all of the city around me with the whales and sea creatures as well. It was immediately interesting and so different to anything I had experienced before in a game. But the thing about Rapture that makes me love it so much is that every area you go to is already ruined. Something has happened in the past, but you aren't sure what. And thanks to amazingly acted recordings and also environmental designs, you are able to uncover what had happened in the months prior and why people are hanging in the streets or tunnels have collapsed and why creepy little girls are walking around with giant suit wearing creatures called Big Daddies. The whole building of this city is fascinating as well, similar to Night City where one businessman wants a whole city to himself, free from the rules of the government and international law, where he and his fellow intellectuals and businessmen could do what they want without any restrictions. It's a really interesting premise, one where you somewhat think to yourself, how could this possibly be a bad thing? But obviously when humans can do what they want without any restrictions, it means the worst comes out of people. Greed, suspicion and corruption runs rampant and obviously left Rapture in ruin. That, as well as the fact that the clear rich and poor divide as well as the racial divide will never disappear, and in fact is worse within Rapture than it is on the surface, and makes it even more clear that this city will never work and was always doomed to fail from the start. I personally believe it is a fantastic way of focusing a lot of real world political situations and social situations in more of a confined place, and is a good look at what would happen if a world without rules and a functioning government would work, and how the founder of Andrew Ryan lets that get to him. But on top of that, the splices and the once human creatures within BioShock are also extremely well designed and terrifying to encounter, with more and more appearing later on as you venture on your travels. It's great to explore how far humans will go for ultimate power and how much their ambition drives them mad. I always remember how terrifying yet brilliant the encounter with Sander Cohen was, where he would play Waltz of the Butterfly as you dance around killing the splices in time to the music. It was such a memorable moment and great piece of storytelling to show how mad that character was and how this whole event was just a show to him because entertainment was key and it didn't matter to him how he went about it. The whole of Rapture is just one of the best stories within all of gaming, with it being so different to anything I've ever played before, and still to this day I don't know many worlds like it. It's filled with mystery, filled with character stories, fills you with dread and terror, and whilst the gameplay might be dated, dated and not as fun anymore to some, the world is worth staying for, and the story will live long in the gaming history books. Like many said in my video as well, the book about Rapture is also a fantastic dive into the full history of the making of the city and the events happening within it, and just gives so much more context to what was going on within this dark and cursed city that is now filled with corruption and monsters. This video I made about the rise and fall of Rapture was pretty difficult to make though. The console commands are not the easiest to use, and most of the time I was falling through the world and making the game completely crash. However, with that said, I was able to eventually grab footage of the individual areas, and it allowed me to just explore every area in great depth, which just made me love this game even more. Sadly, I can't really do that anymore, as for some reason 2K released an update which doesn't let you do console commands anymore, so the world of BioShock will have to wait for now. But with that said, I love exploring these worlds brilliantly crafted by them, and I hope the next BioShock game has a world that is just as rich in lore and storytelling like Rapture has. To end this list, we have yet another area and my favourite story that I have explored over the years, that being the terrifying ghost city of the Sierra Madre. Whilst this expansion was seen by many as not great due to the weird mechanics introduced and it being pretty broken, many, if not everyone who played it, can agree that the story and location was well worth it. I wanted to explore this place as it was around Halloween and I wanted a pretty creepy story to tell. But whilst the world is pretty terrifying to explore with its ghost people surrounding the area, the story itself is actually quite heartbreaking. Yet another tale about betrayal and being left to suffer due to the actions taken place. The whole of the Sierra Madre is just so unique once again. It is completely closed off from the rest of the world due to this mysterious cloud that coats the area, killing anyone that gets close to it. But the technology it houses is far more advanced than anything else other than the Big Empty. This place was originally meant to be a luxury casino where people could go to relax and try and win their livelihoods. A place for the wealthy, with the inside of the city being one of true grandeur. But with its design, it would go through so many dodgy business tricks that would ultimately lead to its downfall. I love that this story has at the center of it one man who is so ambitious but also lets himself be walked over by other corrupt people that only want to take his money from him. The slums of the area are meant to be the workers' lodging, but due to bad construction they have become broken buildings where many had died in the process of living here. But now after the war, these budget cuts have led to the workers now being stuck within their hazard equipment, roaming the land, going mad and killing anyone in their way. There's absolutely tons to unpack with the Sierra Madre. It's a fantastic concept of a city that is very different to anything Fallout has done before, but the story of its creator is what makes it stand out for me. What would you do if the person of your dreams, your lover, was only using you to grab your wealth after you had built this whole place for her? It would absolutely ruin you, and seeing that realization of what had happened during this time here is really quite tragic and makes the journey to the vault even more interesting as you realize that it is essentially there as a tomb for the man who betrayed him in the first place, as well as being for anyone who were to seek out the wealth for themselves. I think I love this story because I just find those intimate tales really interesting. The different emotions and sides of the story each character goes through adds a ton of depth to what you see within the world and makes that journey to uncover what is going on all the more urgent. That and the world of the Sierra Madre is just so creepy to go around, with small environmental storytelling things that help you capture a picture of what this place would have looked like before the war hit. With all that said, however, this video was an absolute nightmare to make because even to this date the DLC is extremely buggy and I had many crashes and times where the world would just not work at all. But when it did, it was great fun to explore. Utilizing the free cam and stopping the enemies from attacking me would allow me to get up and close to them to see what they looked like, to explore some buildings I wouldn't be able to access without the correct stats, and also being able to venture to the top of the map and look over the whole city that is coated in the red mist. I loved making and piecing together this story, and when I think back about all the videos I have made, I always have strong memories of capturing this one, and it was one of the first videos I made that did really well. and helped me realize that the way I captured footage and told the story was working. And I'm glad, because I really feel like the world of Sierra Madre is one all should experience, because whilst the mechanics of this DLC were questionable, the story is really beautifully written and executed, and has some great characters within it. Match that with the world design around the story and you just have a brilliant all-round experience. And that is why Sierra Madre is my favourite story I have explored whilst making lore videos. I just think the world design is really interesting, it's pretty terrifying to explore, and the story behind the founder is one of ultimate betrayal, and finding a way back at the people he trusted the most is really a fantastic, intimate tale. And those are my top 10 favourite lore stories I have explored over the years. Let me know what your favourite lore stories are and what your favourite video of mine is, or what was the one that made you subscribe to this channel. I want to say once again a huge thank you for supporting this channel over the years and helping it get to this milestone, but also for taking your time out of your day for watching this video here. Your support honestly means the world to me. If you want the links to these videos, they're in the description below, as well as the playlist for all of my many different lore videos. It would be amazing if you could check them all out, as well as leaving a like, sub if you haven't already, and a nice comment with something like, "Wow, he's the wisest fish I've ever heard." Also, please do check out my Twitch channel, WiseFish YT. I will be streaming there most Fridays and Saturdays, and may do some other days as well, schedule dependent. I also want to say a huge thank you to my patrons who always allow me to make videos on a regular basis, and without them I wouldn't be where I am now. So thank you to my small fishes, my big fishes Anthony, Arto Krem, Christopher, Greg, and Last Persona User, my YouTube channel ones, Video Game Player 75, Ico the Wolf, Sith Lord 906, A Frosty Vodka, Tomb of Ash, and Fiery Italian, my Sharks Jason X117 and Wow Such Gaming, and my Megalodons, Chernobyl Stalker, Hazy Thoughts, Rhodacy, and Sinus. But that is all for now. I've really enjoyed making this video, and hopefully it's given you an insight into the stuff I love to make, as well as the things I enjoy in games. But thank you all for watching once again, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.